Welcome to Marin Voices and Views. With Lawrence A. Strick, I'm Peter B. Collins. Our guest today is Dick Spotswood, the political columnist for the Marin Independent Journal since 2004. Dick is a personal injury attorney who lives and works in Mill Valley, where he served 3 terms on the City Council. Dick, welcome to our show.
Larry, Peter B., pleasure to be here.
You tag yourself as a militant centrist. What does that mean? And where do you see yourself in the local political spectrum?
Militant centrist comes from a book about Italian politics. I'm half Italian, you may know. Italian, it was saying, the gist of the book was that everybody in Italy is militant. The left wing is militant, the right wing is militant, quote, even the centrists are militant, just the nature of Italian politics. And I just thought it was a good term. Mm-hmm. And so, you have to come up with a name for a blog or a column. Why not call yourself the militant centrist if you're a registered declined estate? Now, Peter B. and Larry, I was raised as a Democrat. Spent a lot of time in the Democratic Party. And you cannot write, in my opinion, a newspaper column or be on public television regularly unless people are going to say, what are you going to do politically? You're going to run for something. And in 1992, when I started at KRCB, I had been very active in politics, and I resolved, that's it. I retired, make good effort, good try, and I didn't want anybody to think that I was going to be using this as a stepping stone for politics, because it destroys your credibility. Mm-hmm. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, I am never running for office again. It was a great experience. I urge everybody to do it, but that was part of my past, and I did that. So I said, well, I better become a declined estate. I always considered myself maybe more of a Leo McCarthy Democrat, mm-hmm. if you're older enough to remember that.
Unfortunately, I'm old enough.
Yeah.
And I do remember.
And I knew Leo very well. And so I felt comfortable becoming a declined estate.
Mm-hmm. Well, now you're publishing in the IJ on Wednesdays and Sundays.
That's correct.
You're running a pretty active blog.
Fairly active. The Wednesday took some of the air out of the blog, mm-hmm. because the items I would have put on the blog, which were items, mm-hmm. Kind of a dot items, 2 or 3 or 4 items in a column. It goes on Wednesday.
Which brings up my question, really, is are you a journalist, a reporter, or are you a commentator?
Well, I'm not a reporter, for whatever,
okay.
Period. A reporter there's the firewall between opinion and news, as it should be, and I'm on the opinion side. And so I prefer the term columnist, but if on the old days in television, Eric Severide was a commentator, so commentator is fine, it's all the same. I give my opinion.
I think you do some interesting journalism too, and I live in the Ross Valley, and I give you credit for digging in and breaking the story about our corrupt executive director of the sanitary district, and it led to he ran off to Florida, then they picked him up in the Philippines, and now he's facing trial. And I consider that journalism, and I give you a lot of credit for that.
Thank you, Peter. The truth of the matter is I do 3 different kind of columns. And the one probably that's read the least, and maybe I enjoy somewhat the most, is pure punditry. It's like what I do on Channel 22 when we do election night. There's no opinion behind it. There's really no partisanship. I'm going to give everybody, it's the horse race column. And as old-time political people, we care about policy, but sometimes we care about the horse race. So when I do a punditry column, I'm not trying to push anybody. I'm trying to just scope out the race. Mm-hmm. Classically, I'm doing this now in the 2nd Senate district race. I don't have any horse. I don't have any more to carry for anybody. All I ask for is an interesting contest. My only conflict of interest is I don't like unopposed races because there's nothing to talk about.
Right.
But those are punditry columns. The Brett Richards columns in the Ross Valley Sanitary District is what I call a government column. It doesn't necessarily have a policy to it. I'm just kind of looking out there, maybe more journalism than punditry. And the third type is pure opinion columns. It's my opinion that there ought to be a 3rd lane on the Richmond-Santa Fe Bridge. You very well could disagree, and my marching orders is get the conversation going. I never have orders from the IJ to take an ideological position one way or the other, but get the conversation going.
Well, this year there's been a whole bunch of punditry about plans for development around the county. And one of the issues, or the big issue, is are we going to have development of some housing developments, or are we going to have affordable housing? And were you surprised at how excited people got about that?
Well, you have to realize I come from Mill Valley,
where you can't build anything.
The ethic in Mill, there's very few people of any political stripe in Mill Valley that are calling for high-density development, any development,
Right.
any development in Mill Valley. And that was the ethic. And so, I come from that background. And so was I surprised? No. Was it more intense than I thought? Yes. I think that there's, let me just step back and give you a story. 2 or 3 years ago in Mill Valley, we had a big issue over something called the chessboard.
I remember that.
The chessboard was promoted by a guy who's a very good friend of mine, John Cutler, wife of Betsy Cutler, who spent a lot of time in politics herself. He went to someplace and saw one of these things and thought it'd be a great thing to have.
Well, but it was going to be by the book depot. It was going to take, 10 by 10 square feet.
Exactly.
And people got very excited about it.
Very excited about it. He was going to pay for it, so it's not a money issue.
Right.
It was his donation. It goes viral. Everybody goes crazy about it. And at the time, I said to myself, yeah, I get it, but it's disproportionate. And really, it was disproportionate because people were using it as a surrogate. They were just not happy. There was grumbling. And so this was the next thing up that kind of got them ticked off. So that can happen in politics, too. They later on went on to the Miller Avenue precise plan, which was a big deal. But the chessboard was, it sure valid to object to it, never was built.
Which was disappointing because I think it would have been a fun idea.
It was, but the debate was disproportionate, the argument. The housing debate, there's grumbling out there. And so the housing thing comes on, and people who are not particularly involved in Marin County affairs, because they have busy lives, saw it somehow impacting them. I went to Strawberry, and there was a story in the IJ that they were going to have a neighborhood meeting. I don't know if it's a neighborhood, the whole Strawberry was going to have a meeting at the rec center on the housing issue. That Supervisor Kate Sears has been invited. At that point in time, it wasn't clear if she was going to come because she had not accepted. And I said to myself, do I want to go to that meeting? This is going to be one of those up and down. People are just going to get upset and screaming. I mean, frankly, at a certain age, you say to yourself, I don't need this. I can read about it. There'll be a video. I knew there was going to be a video. What do I have to go for? So the phone rings Thursday before the Monday. Hello. Would you like to be the moderator? No. Well, we'd like you to be the moderator. I wasn't sure I was going. And I said, I'd only do it on one condition, that Sears okayed it, and that she was coming. And so I called Sears' office. She didn't respond, but her aide did. She would like you to be the moderator. Please be the moderator. I'll do it. And we ran a very nice meeting, because there wasn't, no funny business was going to be allowed, period. Brought my old gavel from City Hall. I said, I don't like to use the gavel. And I only had to use it once. But there was 350, 375 people in that place. I mean, that's, for Marin County, that's a turnout.
It is a turnout.
I mean, that place was packed.
Now, Dick, the county's planning process, the housing element, which has been, a regular feature since the 1970s, it overlapped with the regional planning process by ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments. But in either case, there is no requirement that a single unit be built. It's a planning process, and that includes affordable or market rate. Do you think that you correctly conveyed this to your readers?
Yeah.
And do you have any regrets about the firestorm that, well, let me finish my question.
Yes and no.
It's not a deposition.
Let
about the
the
firestorm
gentleman
that
complete his
followed
question.
your columns, including the attempted recall of Supervisor Adams.
Well, I think I was reflecting what was happening on the street. An awful lot of people were calling me. Some of the people that normally aren't involved in the process, quite frankly, were upset. I thought it was a real story. I asked myself what I thought. And what I really resented was the regional agencies telling local government what to do. And I have my local government hat on. We built some really award-winning affordable housing projects in Mill Valley. I was part of that. And my office proudly has me with the shovel on 2 of them. So I'm not in any way against affordable housing. And in the proper location, actually some density is okay. Downtown Santa Fe, I don't have any problem with pure high-density housing. I tend to be sold on some really innovative, low-cost second units that I think really applied the best of low-cost housing for lots of reasons. We can get into that. And there was just a marvelous exhibit on this, and I just became sold on the concept. And it ought to be zoned for, and there should be no fees, and there's a whole story of that. But I really resent local government telling us to do things. And you know, once you get some of these various designations.
And just let me correct you. You meant regional government.
Regional government, excuse me. Once you get some of these, all of a sudden rules go with it, streamlining processes, which I don't approve of. I don't want to shortchange those, and I don't want to inadvertently change the really long-fought environmental process. I did not support changing CEQA. I tend to be pretty strong on those issues, and I'm real strong on local authority. Now, if you're a city resident of San Anselmo, and you want to fight hard and push for more, less, elected candidates for more or less or none of affordable housing or high-density housing or anything, great. I just resent the regional folks coming and saying, here's what we want you to do. I want to pay the regional people a compliment, though. When the RENA, and I will say that this was, to an extent, the process worked. When the RENA numbers came out, which is the regional housing allocation numbers, I actually broke the RENA numbers because I simply called somebody at ABAG saying, I don't understand what I've just seen new on your website. And they said, well, those are the new numbers. So I called a couple of my staff member friends who are my reality check people, and they said, where'd you get those? I said, just went up on the website. Let's do it together. Oh, yeah. I mean, it was just breaking. And I thought the RENA numbers that were given were pretty fair. I ran a column saying, these aren't bad. Now, that's because Marin County folks, taxpayers, homeowners, residents, some city council members reacted adversely. And so the folks at ABAG, I thought, responded. So I don't have any criticism of the RENA numbers. I didn't like it at the start of the process, but that's the process.
So let's talk about it.
No, I want to follow up because I really feel that one of your columns left the impression that because Supervisor Adams had pulled the PDA, the Priority Development Area designation in Marinwood, and then Mayor Phillips pulled the PDA in San Rafael, and Supervisor Sears pulled the Tam Junction PDA.
Not the strawberry one.
Correct. So, and it appeared that you were kind of declaring victory for the opponents.
Yes.
And in fact, you can still build housing in those areas. It will be done through a local process, and it might include affordable units.
It very well might.
So what victory was there?
Nothing will be
what
streamlined.
really changed?
Nothing will be streamlined. They're not going to be forced to abide by other rules from ABAG on streamlining the process. I thought Gary Phillips's move was first of all, superb politics. That was good policy. And a number of the people who were critical of the housing were frankly critical of my comment, which praised Phillips for his actions. I don't know what the politics of that is. That's a different story. I think one of the reasons that Phillips had a city council election this time, which I think he would have regarded as highly successful, with Kate Collins and Mary Beth Bushy-Lang, was because folks felt that he had been responsive in North San Rafael to the concerns. And he was responsive. I mean, I know Gary Phillips pretty well. I think he's a good mayor. And, Gary probably changed a bit of his position on that. I mean, he was listening. And, this politics is a two-way street. One of the problems I had, and let me just talk about that strawberry thing because it relates. One of the problems I had at the strawberry meeting was I see the job of councilmen when it comes to certainly even at City Hall or at the county seat or wherever, as being the ambassador of the constituents. Some people see the job as being the government's ambassador to the people. Which way is the road? My view is you're the ambassador of the folks, people out there. You're not government's ambassador of the people. And I understood the frustration. The Strawberry folks felt that they had a probably fairly unified position and that their county supervisor had a very different position. That's a very frustrating thing, and that creates anger in politics. Now, that tension might be good, but it's understandable there's going to be a lot of anger.
Another issue around town, around the county, is traffic. And you've covered the modification of 101 this year over in Corte Madera and the interchange, and you've amplified the concern of some of the local leaders about having an LA-style flyover interchange, I suspect, and that was scrubbed. Are you happy with what decisions are being made out there, or where do you see that, and where do you see that mess going?
The process is flawed. The 101 flyover, LA-style freeway plan was crazy to start with. And I was surprised it lasted as long as it did. Paul Cohn, who you know, is a consultant for TAM, the Transportation Authority of Marin. And I was at one meeting, and I went up to Paul after the meeting, mid-process. I said, Paul, this thing's goofy. He says, it's dead, don't worry about it. I said, that on the record? Well, it's a process. But it was dead. And I think they internally understood it was dead. So the process was disastrous. The results? I don't have any problem with the money was spent. I do have a problem that nothing was done to address the real problems. You know, I'm all for bicycle ways. North-South Bicycle Greenway, I'm on board. I went out and walked it with the bicycle guys. I just, period. Great. Smart? I've been a smart supporter for 20
How about
years.
that tunnel in Alto?
Well, I actually for the tunnel in Alto, because I'm for the concept of a bikeway. I think the objections to the tunnel in Alto are, I understand it, but you got to make the policy decision in that case. I go for the Greenway. Period. I just think it ought to be finished, and it would be a nice amenity for Marin County. If you can afford it, it's a different question. Is it cost effective? You know, we don't know the cost. I could talk to you a long time about the tunnel estimates. They're not very accurate. I think they're high. But on the corridor, I think it was a disaster. 2 people at the big meeting where the final thing was approved, Councilmember Herb Weiner and Councilmember Ford Green of San Anselmo, Weiner of Sausalito, both said, you're not addressing the problem. Cars are backing up for the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge. It's just flowing back into 101, and until you do something about that, everything is not going to work. 2 comments on that. I was very critical about Diane Steinhauser, the general manager, executive director of the Tampa Transportation Authority of Marin, for playing the whole process too close to her vest. This needs to be not only thoroughly vetted, but the process needed to be a 2-way street. It wasn't for a long time until the very end when, amazingly, the day before the meeting, I'd run a piece that Sunday. The day before the meeting, I had asked actually once before to meet with her, and it just didn't happen to happen for whatever reasons. But she calls me and says, let's get together. Great, Diane, I'll show you the plan. Fine. When? 5 o'clock tonight? How about then? Fair enough. So I went and met with her, liked her, had a good meeting. Alice Fredericks came, she's the chairman of the authority. And I said, Alex, why are you here? And she said, because I haven't seen the plan either. It's going to be revealed tomorrow. You know, she's the chairman of the authority. And I asked Steinhauser, and she offered me a great suggestion, but I asked Steinhauser, why hasn't this been addressed? I mean, you know, you're a transportation professional. Cars are back up on the Richmond Bridge. It's San Rafael on the I-580 at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Ridiculous. Larkspur, back to Corte Madera. Ridiculous. I talked to readers who live work in the other East San Rafael. They can't even go the other way because the interchange, it's just crazy. She said, when this was passed as Regional Measure 2 in about 2004, when you read the language, it's to address the problem on the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge leading to it. The feedback we had from Larkspur Council at the time was that, you know, that's helping people that are commuters. We need to spend the money right here in Marin on the freeway so Marin people will benefit. So forget Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. Let's deal with 101 and the interchange. Nothing to do with the route to the bridge. It's just a political call. I said, gee, I just kind of cringed. And she says, I know. She says, but the decision was made. And you know, when the process starts, you start spending money. And so that's how the process got there. Mm-hmm. And then she says, which I had never heard of before in my life, which may show my own ignorance, but I don't believe it's ever appeared in the press, and I did a column on it. She says, I have an idea, or there's an idea I've been kicking around. You know, the Richmond-Santa Fe Bridge was built for 3 lanes in each direction. It's not that big a deal to restore the 3rd lane. And that will at least assist. Well, it's not a long-term solution, but it's not a giant construction project.
Now,
I
Dick,
said, wow!
let me jump in here because that specific idea prompted a pretty strong response from Supervisor Steve Kinsey.
Yes?
To your credit, I read it on your blog,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I appreciate you, being open to present that. Also, North Bay labor leader Lisa Maldonado has criticized you, saying that you were lazy for not checking with her or other labor leaders on their intentions regarding a possible challenger to Assemblymember Mark Levine. Do you think your critics have valid points here?
Kinsey doesn't. Because, first of all, what's his plan? He doesn't have a response to it. The interesting thing is, I don't think Steve Kinsey, Supervisor Kinsey, would support a 3rd lane on the bridge, but I don't know for sure. He did respond to my inquiry and said, yeah, you could do it. All it would do is move the traffic jam, but yeah, you could do it. So I'm for that, or I'm not opposed to that. Very lukewarm, which I reported. You know, all I'll say is that for 30 years, transportation, particularly public transportation, has been my specialty. And I think I know something about public transportation at the very least, and did spend 10 years as a director of the Golden Gate Bridge District, so I'm not unfamiliar with traffic mobility situations. So while Steve Kinsey says, well, you didn't do your homework, my only response is, well, Steve, gee, did I miss something? What did I miss? Maldonado's comment was based on a column I wrote, which I won't say I didn't do the research, but I will say that she has a very good point, and which is, I believe, corrected on my blog. And that's because I just discovered that Diane Conti is running for the Assembly District.
Mm-hmm.
I had the distinct impression.
Let's just back up here.
Oh.
There are 2 potential challengers for Mark Levine. Aaron Carl Strum, City
Santa Rosa
Council member, Santa Rosa. And recently we've seen that Diana Conti, who is a member of the College Board of Trustees in Marin, is testing the waters for that.
No.
She's in?
She
Does
told me she was
formally?
running.
Okay.
She's not testing the waters.
Mm-hmm.
She told me point blank, I'm running.
Okay. So in the newspaper version of your column, you said that Karlstrom is running and that she has tipped her fealty to labor by rejecting San Jose Mayor Chuck Reed's ballot initiative about pension reform. And that's what Maldonado was responding to and saying that labor hasn't picked a candidate in this race.
She's right.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that Karlstrom, well, the trouble with punditry columns, you mixed punditry and opinion, because when I say there ought to be a 3rd lane on the Bay Bridge, Richmond-Santa Fe Bridge, that's my opinion. Mm-hmm. You might want to have a bike lane. I think that's the opinion of some folks. Caltrans probably takes the position, don't do anything.
Right.
Because that's Caltrans. And they would like a pullover lane. I mean, frankly, that's the Caltrans position. That's not punditry. That's opinion. The 10th AD district, 10th Assembly District races, I've got no candidate in the race. So I'm just trying to pundit. Mm-hmm. I had talked to Karlstrom. And I think Conti's entry into the race and Maldonado's group would probably came as a big surprise to Karlstrom. Carlson, when I talked to her, felt pretty strongly that she was going to have major labor backing. Mm. Yes, she did sign. She signed the petition. So did Mike McGuire, who's running for the state senate. No question, it is kind of a litmus test issue for the labor guys. Let me see them support a candidate who doesn't sign that petition. They're not going to do it. But the trouble with punditry is every day there's a new story. So, last week, I can tell you this, last week, Erin Carlson felt with good reason that she might have a good shot at getting labor. This week, I think if you talk to Erin Carlson, well, I haven't talked to her this week, I have talked to Diana Conti, I can tell you that Maldonado is right. Conti certainly has a strong impression that she's there, so I can see that. You know, the nature of punditry is it's a moving game, and you know, what's right last week is not right this week. I give her that consider. Yeah, is that fair? Okay.
What are your thoughts on Susan Adams' race in San Rafael Councilman Damon Conley challenging her.
With the backdrop of a petition circulating to qualify an initiative on term limits
Yeah,
for
you know,
supervisors.
one of the things that was unmentioned, it was out there, it was available, nobody's done it, is that the Republicans did a poll, you know. They inquired. The poll was going out when that was alive. And 50% of the respondents, the Republican poll in my mind, it was an online poll, which I tend to...
This is the poll about support for county supervisor.
Yeah, but
term
they did other
limits.
things.
Uh-huh.
And they released all that. Just nobody picked it up.
Well, I read that poll with interest, and I went to the details.
Yeah.
And what it shows is that the numbers that they show are hardline Republican, for example, on term limits, Republican support is in the 90% range.
I believe
And
that.
so people opted into that survey. I don't consider it a poll. I think it's an interesting
Yeah.
barometer, but it's not a scientific poll.
I don't believe, I'm a believer in traditional polling methods, which is a little more sophisticated these days because of the phenomena of the cell phone. And I know an awful lot of pollsters. And so would I rely more, if I was doing it, I'd rely on a traditional method.
I believe in term limits, meaning if you don't like the guy, don't reelect him. That's a.
But that's not
term
the polling
limit.
question.
No, I understand that, but
The-
that's my position on term
Yeah,
limits.
the interesting thing, well, but you asked about too many questions. You asked about the race. Let's talk about the race first.
In 20 seconds, sorry.
Oh, 20 seconds? It's a new race. Damon Conley is a pretty conservative person, doesn't make rash decisions. He wouldn't have gotten this race unless he thought he could win. To her great credit, Carol Brandt did not want to be in a race unless she could win. I'm glad I think I respect her decision. Susan Adams is a heck of a candidate, and she's going to have a heck of a race from Damon Conley. That's going to be a head-on race.
Dick Spotswood, this conversation could go on. Thanks for joining us
Oh, it's a
today.
pleasure. All right, Peter?
Thanks for coming by.